Hello and welcome to Indus News, live from Islamabad. I'm Naila Shuja and these are the headlines. Pakistan says it wants peace in Afghanistan and it would only come if all factions accept a political solution. Addressing a press conference at the Pakistan Embassy in Washington, National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf said Pakistan is focused on ensuring that tensions in Afghanistan do not lead to more bloodshed. On Afghan refugees, he said arrangements should be made to keep displaced Afghans inside their country instead of pushing them into Pakistan. Fighting is raging around three major cities in southern and western Afghanistan as Taliban make gains amid the withdrawal of foreign forces. Taliban fighters have entered parts of Herat, Lashkargah, and Kandahar. The Taliban say they struck Kandahar airport with 3 rockets to thwart airstrikes conducted by the Afghan forces. Myanmar's military ruler Min Aung Hlaing has taken on the new title of Prime Minister of newly formed caretaker government. Earlier in a televised address, Min repeated his promise to hold new multi-party elections. He said his government is also ready to work with any ASEAN special envoy within the association's framework. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has urged the people to adhere to the SOPs to curb the spread of the ongoing 4th wave of coronavirus. He was conversing with the people of Pakistan in a live question and answer session via telephone. The country has registered 62 new deaths and more than 5,000 infections, the highest in 5 months. For more news and details, stay tuned. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back. Pakistan says it wants peace in Afghanistan and it would only come if all factions accept a political solution. National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf said this while addressing a press conference at the Pakistan Embassy in Washington.
Yusuf said Pakistan is focused on ensuring that tensions in Afghanistan do not lead to more bloodshed. On Afghan refugees, he said arrangements should be made to keep displaced Afghans inside their country instead of pushing them into Pakistan. Yusuf added that if a situation arises, it is the responsibility of the international community to create a secure area inside Afghanistan. He described the government's U.S. policy as pragmatic and unapologetic, but not boastful. The National Security Advisor arrived in Washington on 27th of July, along the Director General of Inter-Services Intelligence, Faiz Hamid, for talks with their American counterparts. They held talks with U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan at the White House, which was also attended by other security officials from both sides.
Fighting is raging around three major cities in southern and western Afghanistan as the Taliban make gains amid the withdrawal of foreign forces. Taliban fighters have entered parts of Herat, Lashkargah, and Kandahar.
Since May, with the announcement of foreign troops pullout, the Taliban have intensified their attacks on government forces. In Lashkargah, the Taliban fighters were reported only hundreds of meters away from the governor's office, but had been pushed back. The Taliban say they struck Kandahar airport with 3 rockets to thwart airstrikes conducted by the Afghan forces. Government officials said the runway was partially damaged and the attacks forced them to suspend all flights. Meanwhile, the Taliban and United Nations officials discussed the attack on a UN compound in Herat province. Mohammed Naeem said both sides regretted the damage caused to the office of the UN mission. The group emphasized that such incidents should not be used for political gain. He said the Taliban reaffirmed the policy of providing security for the UN and all facilities in the areas under their control.
For more on this, we are joined by Mr. James Dorsey, an international analyst speaking to us from Singapore. Mr. Dorsey, thank you so much for your time. Now, Mr. Dorsey, Pakistan's National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf has said that Pakistan cannot bear the burden of hosting more Afghan refugees. Have the United States and its allies made any arrangements to keep the displaced Afghans in their country before the withdrawal?
It's certainly true that Pakistan, as well as other neighboring countries, but particularly Pakistan, has carried the burden of Afghan refugees for many years. Having said that, it's quite clear that we're going to probably get a new wave of refugees, and I don't see that there is that much that the United States and its allies will be able to do about it, particularly since they've withdrawn their forces. So this is really going to come down to Afghanistan's neighbors, with Pakistan in the lead.
Mr. Dorsey, now despite the peace talks in Doha, the fighting is raging in Afghanistan and the Taliban have continued to make gains. Do you see any political settlement in the near future?
I don't think anybody expected the fighting not to rage because of the peace talks in Afghanistan and the way that those peace talks were handled. At this point, the question still remains, what is the ultimate Taliban objective? Is the objective to increase leverage in terms of negotiations with the government in Kabul, as well as with Afghanistan's neighbors? Or are we now seeing a new stage in the offensive by the Taliban, which means that they do want to take the urban centers?
Mr. Dorsey, the Afghan parliamentarians have accused their newly appointed Chief of Army Staff, General Wali Ahmadzai, of focusing on the rivalries with the Corps commanders instead of war. Are the Taliban taking advantage of these rivalries among the Afghan military?
I think there's no doubt that they're taking advantages of differences between within the Kabul government and its supporters. Having said that, there are differences among the Taliban too, and they're being exploited by other parties. That's par for the course.
Mr. James Dorsey, thank you so much for speaking to Indus News. Now moving on, Pakistan hopes India will act fairly during its month-long tenure as the President of the UN Security Council. India will be holding the presidency of the powerful 15-nation body for the month of August, beginning on Sunday. Islamabad reminded New Delhi of its legal obligation to implement the Council resolutions on occupied Jammu and Kashmir, welcoming the letter by European lawmakers expressing concerns over rights abuses in the valley. The Foreign Office said India continues its propaganda to push the sham narrative of so-called normalcy. The office's spokesperson said India must realize that it cannot ignore the international community's calls. It said the global censure and condemnation of the Indian atrocities in the occupied valley go on. Indian troops have martyred 37 civilians, including 2 women, in occupied Jammu and Kashmir during the last month. According to the media reports, the occupying troops killed 8 people in fake encounters or in custody. During the month, 28 people, including media men, were critically injured after Indian troops used brute force on peaceful protesters. The reports maintain that at least 57 civilians were arrested under the Black Law Public Safety Act. The troops also damaged 10 houses during at least 219 cordon and search operations. Myanmar's military ruler Min Aung Hlaing has taken on the new title of Prime Minister of a newly formed caretaker government. He chaired the military-backed State Administration Council that has run Myanmar since the February 1st coup. State media said the council has been reformed as the caretaker government in order to function effectively. Earlier in a televised address, Min repeated his promise to hold new multi-party elections. He called on all sides to create conditions to hold a free and fair general election. He also said his government is ready to work with any ASEAN special envoy within the association's framework. Meanwhile, ASEAN foreign ministers are scheduled to meet on Monday to finalize the special envoy. Iran has denied involvement in an attack on an Israeli-managed tanker off the coast of Oman. The attack on the vessel 3 days back killed 2 foreign crew members on board. In a news briefing, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Saeed Khatibzadeh condemned Israel's accusations. He said Tel Aviv has created insecurity, terror, and violence. Meanwhile, the U.S. military says its Navy is assisting the tanker, which was believed to be hit by a drone strike. In a statement, the CENTCOM said U.S. Navy explosive experts are prepared to support an investigation into the attack. Earlier, Israeli Foreign Minister Yair Lapid spoke with his U.S. counterpart, Antony Blinken, over the incident. In a tweet, Lapid said the two sides are working together to formulate an effective international response. A Palestinian man has been killed in a shooting in the Israel's Galilee region. Medics say 2 others were stabbed and critically wounded in a related act of violence in the Yakar village. 30-year-old Serhan Atallah was reportedly married a day earlier. Over 56 Palestinian nationals of Israel have been killed since the beginning of the year in an ongoing crime wave. Palestinians have long blamed the Israeli police for turning a blind eye to gun violence among Arab Israelis. The police are even suspected of collaborating with the criminal gangs. In Yemen, the Saudi-led coalition says it has intercepted and destroyed a booby-trapped drone launched by the Houthi rebels. The coalition said that the drone was fired towards the Hamas Mushaith region in Saudi Arabia. It added that all futile attempts to target civilians will be confronted. This comes a day after the coalition thwarted a Houthi drone attack on a Saudi commercial ship. The General Secretary of the Council of Arab Interior Ministers and the Bahraini Foreign Ministry condemned the attack on the ship. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has tasked Prime Minister Hussein Arnis to form a new government. The decision came following the May election that extended Assad's 2-decade-old presidency. The Syrian president named Hussein Arnis as the prime minister last year to replace Imad Khamis, who was fired due to an economic crisis. President Assad took oath last month for a 4th term in office. Meanwhile, the Western governments and the UN criticized the Syrian elections as a farce. Azerbaijan says Armenian forces have once again violated the ceasefire and it's targeted its positions in the Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic. The Azeri Defense Ministry said Nakhchivan's Hyderabad settlement were attacked from Armenia's Vidi city. The ministry said its forces responded with a retaliatory fire. However, no casualties have been reported in the attack. Both sides have been reporting skirmishes since a 6-week war over the Nagorno-Karabakh region last year. The United States has urged Tunisia to outline a swift return to the democratic path. Last Sunday, President Kais Saied seized governing powers after dismissing the prime minister over COVID-19 handling and poor governance. In a phone call with Saied, the U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan underscored the need for rapidly forming a new government. In a statement, the White House said Sullivan called for the timely return of an elected parliament. He noted a capable prime minister is a key to stabilizing Tunisia's economy and confronting the COVID-19 pandemic. Meanwhile, Saied has reiterated that Tunisia is on the right path to establishing democracy and pluralism. Speaking to his Algerian counterpart over the phone, Saied said there will be important decisions soon. The United Nations peacekeeping mission in the Central African Republic says 6 civilians have been killed in a rebel attack in the country's northeast. In a statement, a UN spokesperson said militants linked to the 3R group launched a large-scale attack in the village of Man. Several civilians were also wounded in the attack. The country has been mired in violence since a civilian conflict erupted in 2013. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has urged the nation to adhere to the SOPs to curb the spread of the ongoing 4th wave of coronavirus. He was conversing with the public in a live question and answer session via telephone. Khan warned that the new wave is being driven by the highly contagious Delta variant first detected in India. He said a complete lockdown is detrimental to economic growth and that the government will continue its strategy of smart lockdowns. The Prime Minister said he will make sure that there is no shortage of vaccine in the country. Pakistan has registered 62 new deaths and more than 5,000 infections, the highest in 5 months. Brazil has reported more than 900 COVID-19 deaths and nearly 38,000 new cases in the past 24 hours. Globally, the death toll has surpassed 4.2 million, with more than 197 million infections. More in this report.
Controversy surrounding COVID-19 vaccines and Delta-driven surge. Governments are forced to reimpose lockdowns as the protests against restrictions start again. Over in Europe, anti-lockdown protests planned to take place in Berlin, Germany were banned by the city's administrative court. But in France, thousands of people protested against the imposition of a health pass for a wide array of social venues.
I won't go to restaurants. I don't give a damn. I won't sell my soul to go to the cinema or for other nonsense. That's it. There is more at stake. Freedom. There is nothing above freedom. We have started losing all our liberties, so it must stop. That's enough. We must put an end to their nonsense.
In Asia, the situation continues to get worse. Vietnam will impose strict curbs on movement in several cities and provinces from Monday. The Olympics host city Tokyo in Japan, as well as Thailand and Malaysia, announced record infections, mostly driven by the highly transmissible Delta variant. The Thai government says the Delta variant is accounted for more than 60% of the cases in the country and 80% in Bangkok. A Thai hospital morgue, overwhelmed by COVID-19 deaths, has begun storing bodies in refrigerated containers.
Back then, during the tsunami disaster, we used the containers to store bodies that were waiting for autopsies to be identified. But we haven't had to do that until now, as the pandemic has made us resort back to container storage. We now have to buy it instead of renting it, which costs around 250,000 baht each, so that we have it permanently.
Australia's east coast states of New South Wales and Queensland saw the COVID-19 Delta variant spread significantly, with millions under strict lockdown. Sydney and its surrounding reported 239 new cases of Delta strain, matching the record daily number of cases on 29th of July. There were 9 new locally acquired infections in neighbouring Queensland, the biggest daily spike in almost a year.
In the United States, a pandemic-related ban on residential evictions has expired, putting millions of renters at risk of being forced from their homes. The U.S. Senate held a rare Saturday session but did not address the issue and failed to vote on the legislation.
Senator Elizabeth Warren said families in every state are trying to figure out how to survive a devastating and unnecessary eviction. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi noted that Congress had previously approved $46.5 billion in rental relief. She said only $3 billion out of that amount has been distributed to renters. Pelosi said lawmakers are demanding to speedily distribute the complete amount to renters and landlords. Some Democratic lawmakers, including Cori Bush, are rallying outside the Capitol to call for the ban's reinstatement. She was evicted 3 times and lived in a car with her 2 children before her career in politics.
The night was necessary to continue this awareness, because we need our the powers that be to understand that we're not just going to let this go quietly when the lives of actual people that we're supposed to represent, like actual whole people, like human beings.
Over 15 million people and 6.5 million households are currently behind on payments, collectively owing more than $20 billion to landlords.
It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Afghanistan, the death toll from this week's flooding in eastern province of Nuristan has risen to at least 113, with dozens of people still missing. Officials say rescue operations are still underway days after heavy rains overwhelmed Khamdesh district. The flooding has destroyed more than 170 houses and affected nearly 300 families, while over 100 people are still missing. In Pakistan, 5 people have been killed and 4 others injured in rain-related incidents in northwestern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. According to Provincial Disaster Management Authority, relief operations are underway in the affected areas. Heavy mud flows and flash floods had also blocked Karakoram Highway at 26 different locations in the Chalas district. However, Pakistan's military's Frontier Workers Organization has cleared all blocked points for traffic. Moreover, the FWO's workers also constructed a new track as the portion of the highway washed away due to the landslides. A large wildfire tears through Greece's western Peloponnese, burning through forests to reach the shoreline. The authorities ordered the evacuation of residents as the fire crosses over the highway connecting Athens to the city of Patras. This report has more.
The fire broke out in the hills of Syria, about 30 kilometers east of Patras, and quickly spread downwards towards the coast. At least 145 firefighters, aided by 8 helicopters, 8 planes and 1 fire service boat, are battling the blazes. Meanwhile, the wildfires in Canada's British Columbia heavily polluted Penanton Lake and its surroundings. According to authorities, the region's air quality is likely to be impacted by wildfire smoke over the next 24 to 48 hours. The officials also estimate that about 244 fires are active in the region.
Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan says majority of the wildfires are now contained with the support from Azerbaijan, Russia, Ukraine, and Iran. However, Erdogan warned that if fires are sparked by arson, he would take strict actions to punish the perpetrators. President Erdogan also called for unity and solidarity during his visit to the fire-hit areas. According to the authorities, around 100 fires have burned across large areas of western and southern Turkey since Wednesday. Meanwhile, the death toll from the fires rose to 6 as 2 firefighters died during the efforts to control the blaze. The authorities evacuated thousands of people while hundreds of homes have been damaged. Two humanitarian rescue ships pulled 394 migrants from a dangerously overcrowded wooden boat in the Mediterranean. They comprise mostly men from Morocco, Bangladesh, Egypt, and Syria. The German and French NGO rescue ships said that the migrants were Tunisian waters near the African coast. Witnesses say the craft carrying the migrants was taking in water and its engine were not working. They noted many of the migrants jumped off the boat and tried to swim towards the rescue ships. There are no reports of any deaths or injuries among the migrants so far. Migrant boat departures from Libya and Tunisia to Italy and other parts of Europe have increased in the recent months. New Zealand has formally apologized for racially targeting immigration raids on the Pacific community during the 1970s. The Dawn raids took place from the 1974 to 1976 and resulted in deportations and prosecutions of community members. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern made the formal state apology at a ceremony at Auckland Town Hall. Addressing hundreds in attendance, Ardern said the Pacific communities continue to suffer and carry the scars of the raids. She said the government regretted that the raids were ever considered appropriate. Ardern also announced scholarships amounting to $2.5 million for the communities. The event included a traditional Samoanian ceremony in which people asked or received forgiveness. U.S. Justice Department says nearly 30 top prosecutor official email accounts were hacked during a major breach last year. The attack on users of the software SolarWinds is the worst ever cyber espionage attack on the U.S. government. According to the department office, computers of 27 attorneys were also hacked. The department said the hackers compromised the accounts as early as May 2020. The latest disclosure has raised fears that the hackers may have accessed sensitive information, including the names of informants. The U.S. blamed Russia for the hacks, which gave cyber criminals access to 18,000 government and private computer networks. In Germany, a Munich-based travel agency is selling tickets to space. A €250,000 ticket will allow flyers to board the Virgin Galactic to space for an hour. More in this report.
Luxury travel agents Design Racing is the only agency in Germany handling the bookings for space travel. The agency's manager Marion Aliabadi says anyone can fly provided they are physically fit and not recovering from an operation.
It doesn't matter how old you are, you can be 90. If you're healthy and sporty, there are people who are 90 years old and still do many things. Age is not the limit, health is. The cardiovascular system should be okay. A recent heart attack or operation is not ideal because there is pressure on the body and nobody wants a scar breaking.
Commercial space travel has drawn mixed opinions from the public, with some excited by the possibility while others remaining skeptical.
Well, I like the idea because at first glance it looks totally unreal and utopian. But with any sort of progress, you have to start somewhere. So I find it quite interesting.
No, not for me. I'm scared of space. I'm rather on Earth. I'm also scared of water. It's not for me.
With billionaires Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos flying into space recently, there has been a lot of talk surrounding commercial space travel. Ali Abadi stumbled across Branson's project in 2009 and undertook 12 years of training to understand what she is selling. So far, her agency has managed to sell 8 tickets to male clients.
In Peru, climbers have scaled the mighty HUASCARAN mountain to unfurl a massive flag near its peak. The group says the aim was to show unity in the politically divided country. More in this report.
At 6,768 meters, HUASCARAN, in Peru's high summit, located in the province of Bungy, climbers battle thick snow and thin air to reach the top. And to make their feat even more difficult, more than 20 climbers helped carry towards the summit a massive Peruvian flag.
Never has this challenge project been done before, to take a flag that is 200 meters and which weighs 400 kilos to the most important peak in Peru, the HUASCARAN.
The flag was unfurled on the HUASCARAN mountain on July 12th, in time for the country's bicentenary celebrations on July 28th. Victor Rimac helped organize this expedition, hoping to unite the country after divisive presidential elections.
We started a project called Flag for the Bicentenary. This project commemorates 200 years of the country and for us to be able to unite Peru because the political situation has divided us a lot. So with this project, we have tried to unite Peruvians and send out a message of fellowship and hope.
The spectacular Mount HUASCARAN is named after the 16th century Inca leader Huasca. The ascent normally takes 21 days.
In China, the world's highest bungee jump is open to visitors in the Yunnan province. Thrill seekers can leap into the abyss from a glass-bottomed suspension bridge. More in this report. Straddled between two cliffs in China's Henan province, a 430-meter glass-bottomed suspension bridge offers the world's highest bungee jump from a footbridge.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
Visitors to the Zhangjiajie Grand Canyon Glass Bridge can leap a height of 260 meters, a stomach-churning way to take in the views of the surrounding Wuling Yuan Wilderness, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The area, a popular international tourist attraction, is famous for its quartzite sandstone pillars and peaks extending into the clouds, along with deep ravines and gorges.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
This bridge is amazingly safe. I mean, I've worked on a lot of bridges and cantilever arms and towers, and this is an amazing design. I love it because the suspension bridge reminds me of the bridge I started off back in New Zealand in the late 80s, the Kawara. No, it's beautiful. And the height makes it actually even more intriguing. It's one of the highest bungees in the world.
The bungee jumping operation opened at the end of 2020, delayed by the restrictions imposed by the Chinese government because of the coronavirus pandemic. To compensate for the lack of foreign tourists, the cost of a jump has been cut by around 40% to RMB 1998, roughly $306.
It's been great since we've opened up. The numbers have increased daily. We're looking forward to this July-August period to hopefully the numbers come up even more. We're probably averaging 20 jumps a day at the moment, which is pretty good for a jump of the size.
The pedestrian bridge was designed by Israeli architect Haim Dotan and opened in August 2016. It was once the longest glass-bottomed suspension bridge in the world. It's now time to take a look at the weather updates from around the world. For the latest news updates, you can follow us on our social media at indus.news.